The end of zombies. Empty, lacking, and unsatisfying. These are all the main ways I describe how I feel about the end of zombies, and unfortunately this isn't something unique only to me, and in fact a lot of people seem to feel very similar. I mean,
really?
Almost everywhere you look, people's reactions to the end have almost all been negative, and even if it's not negative, it's really not positive either. It's more like, it's okay, it's not as bad as people say, or it's better than you think. Nothing really explicitly positive. And this is something that honestly sucks, because the Aether story was probably my favorite story of all time, and to see it end in such a way, in such a negative way at that, it really does anger me. But really more than anger, it really kind of just makes me depressed to see my most cherished story of all time to have this done to it. But really, what made it turn out this way? I mean, honestly, how did we go from the smallest cipher that really didn't mean anything just to be solved, and we get so hyped for that, videos for that get so many views, to now when the story ends, it's only 2 weeks after it happened and nobody's really even talking about it. And unfortunately, this isn't something that's too hard to figure out why it's the case. It feels like no matter how you look at it, it seems like this was going to happen no matter what inside this game. And that's what I want to discuss here. I want to talk about how the end of zombies turned out the way it turned out. And we're going to be looking at this from a lot of different angles, but first I want to just discuss what happened in the story. And this isn't any external things at all. This is just what happened, and I'm going to talk about what's wrong with what happened for the end of zombies. And we're going to mainly focus on the ending cutscene, because the ending cutscene really hit the main points that we were expected to see out of the end of zombies. I mean, we knew our characters were going to die. The seeds for that had been planted years ago, all the way back during Black Ops 3, and we kind of figured that they were going to eventually die during the end. So that wasn't anything to be upset about, because that's what we expected. And of course, the other thing is that we expected all of 115, the Aether, Dr. Monty, and everything to be destroyed in one way or another. Of course, being banished to the Dark Aether easily works too. So those main points are fine, and that's what we expected. But really, it's kind of everything else besides that that kind of really hurt this end, because that's for kind of the things that really hurt it, that what we saw happen is first is how our characters died, because honestly, we were expecting to see something, more amazing with our characters dying, because in this they were all just murdered and poisoned by Primus Nikolai. And what's cool about that? I mean, we were expecting to see at least something, maybe them dying in a great battle, or giving their own lives in self-sacrifice for the greater universe and to fix the universe. And it really sucks, because I was really hoping for what would happen at the end would be the latter half, that all our characters would choose to self-sacrifice themselves for the greater universe, or to fix the universe. And I was really hoping to see something very similar to what we saw in Blood of the Dead. I mean, Blood of the Dead's ending cutscene is probably the best cutscene in all of zombies, and one of the best cutscenes maybe ever, because it's just so well done. When you see Richtofen, who has been obsessed with just trying to keep himself alive, to then decide to reluctantly, honestly, and really not trying to even kill himself, but he did self-sacrifice himself for his partners. And that was honestly one of the most amazing things we ever saw happen, and it was just so cool. Compare that to what we got with all our characters' deaths inside this ending. They were poisoned. They didn't have a choice in this. It was all Nikolai who decided their fates for them, and it really does suck to just see that, because it just isn't nearly as cool as what I wanted out of this and what I know we could have got out of this. And it just really does suck to see how they decided to go about that. But another problem with this, and maybe this is just a problem I have with it, but it really is frustrating to me, but in the ending cutscene where Nikolai had Samantha shoot him, like, that is just dumb. It is the worst part of zombies maybe ever, because let's think about this. So we had a little innocent girl, and yes, she was innocent because she had been cleansed and she's going to go to the new universe. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's why she's able to go to the new universe, because she's not corrupted at all. But then Nikolai decides to have a small innocent girl shoot him. why couldn't he just shot himself or drank the poison with everybody else? It's just dumb. It just is so frustrating to see. I mean, it would have been better to see that he was just dead with everybody else or something like that, but instead he had Samantha shoot him, and it just frustrates me so much every single time I think about it. But of course, unfortunately, the biggest problem with the end is honestly not what happened, because like I said, they hit the main points, and yes, our characters' deaths was a huge disappointment, and Nikolai having Samantha shoot him were big bummers too and just dumb, but really what hurt this ending more than anything is of the lack of what happened. Like, there were so many things leading into this that we thought were going to finally be paid off, and they just kind of didn't, and it's just kind of frustrating. But of course, we'll get into those in a second, but the first things I want to talk about is just our playable characters, because the playable characters in the final map in the Aether storyline were Victus. Just think about that for a second. Like, the end of the story, for which our main characters have been Ultimus and Primus this entire time, and for the end of the story, they're not even the playable characters? I mean, what? It's just, wow. And I don't understand that. Like, I just don't. It just frustrates me so much to think that for the final map, and we're never going to see our most beloved Ultimus and Primus characters ever again, and all we get from them are campfire quotes, which could have also still been in the game even if we were our beloved characters. I mean, I don't get it. It's just so dumb. I mean, yeah, for the people who like Victus, that's cool, and honestly, I don't hate Victus, but I'm not the biggest fan either. I don't really mind them being back or anything, but it's just dumb to see that they're the playable characters in the last map in Zombies history. It's just dumb, and for them to meet the fate that they were just used the entire time, it just really didn't even help their characters. Like, it just was like, well, they were just pawns for Nikolai, and it's just so dumb, and I really don't like how they decided to bring Victus back and how they treated Victus and how they treated all the characters in this ending. It was just dumb after dumb mistake after dumb mistake, and of course there's a lot more, and this is another thing that just didn't happen. I mean, where the heck's Monty? I mean, honestly, where is Monty? I mean, obviously people are going to bring up budget, and I'm planning to make a separate video talking about budget, because that is probably a little bit more frustrating than what I'm going to be saying here. But really, the lack of Monty is so dumb, because I mean, let's think about this. We had been building towards Monty being a bad guy for a while now. Like, this has been the whole thing of Black Ops 4. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory tells me that in Blood of the Dead, Richtofen explicitly says to Nikolai,
"You must keep your soul. It will be needed to defeat Dr. Monty."
What? Where? When did we defeat Dr. Monty? It never happened. And this is just something that makes no sense at all, because we know for a fact Treyarch were building towards a fight against Dr. Monty, but when we actually got DLC 4 and we finished it, there was no Dr. Monty to be seen outside of one pan of him during the ending cutscene where he did nothing at all. And it just makes no sense, because on top of that, in the map, we have radio saying Dr. Monty, the only thing he wants is to continue living, continue existing. But when Nikolai was going to go destroy him, he did nothing, or banish him to the Dark Aether. I mean, he did nothing to stop that after he made a whole loop just for he could exist. Then he does nothing to stop Nikolai. It's just dumb. Like, it makes no sense at all, and it's just so frustrating to think about that Monty was just not there. Like, wow, dude, it's just dumb. But of course, I do want to quickly go over a lot of smaller things that I'm not going to try to talk about too long, because then the video would be like a 40-minute video just on this part alone. But there's a lot of other things that honestly never got paid off. And the first thing I need to talk about is the Shadow Man and the Summoning Key. I mean, we know the Shadow Man was in the Summoning Key. Like, this is a known fact, because we never released him in Revelations, because the cycle was broken before we went to Revelations. So he was in the Summoning Key, and that never turned into anything. Okay, how about Takio and Dempsey in the Summoning Key themselves? I mean, we had their innocent souls inside the Summoning Key, so what happened to them? We just destroyed their innocent souls? And if that's the case, why couldn't we use all of their innocent souls to go to the new world, but we are only able to use Richtofen's and Samantha? I mean, why? It's just a big old question mark. Like, why are we missing these things? I mean, what happened to their souls? I mean, Nikolai's soul makes sense because they never collected it, but we know we collected Takio's and Dempsey's souls, but we just destroyed those souls, those innocent souls, by the way, instead of sending them to the new and innocent world. It just makes no sense at all. And another thing that never paid off is Peter McCain in Alpha Omega.
I have some unfinished business to attend to. I'll never forget what you did for me.
He said he was going to go do something, but did he just try to go do something? But then Nikolai just erased everything, including him, because he's a part of 115 and the Aether and everything. So he just got banished to the Dark Aether too and never did anything. Okay, that's cool. Another thing, this one really frustrates me, is what happened to Ultimus Will Prevail? I mean, this was written all over the walls and classified, but yet that never happened. What did Ultimus do? They didn't do anything. They just died with Primus, and then zombie Ultimus Richtofen just died too. I mean, what happened to that? And another thing is just that what happened, this is kind of talking about what I said earlier when, of course, in Blood of the Dead during the ending cutscene where we had Richtofen tell Nikolai, keep your soul, it'll be needed to defeat Dr. Monty, and we already went over the second half of that, but whatever happened to Nikolai's soul? Why did he need his soul? We have no reason to think that he actually needed his soul. At what point did Nikolai's soul help him break the cycle? Because all it seems like what happened is that Nikolai was willing to do what Richtofen wouldn't. That's all it seemed like what happened. It did not seem like he needed his soul in any way, shape, or form. And I just don't get that. I don't get why we were told that we were going to defeat Dr. Monty and Nikolai's soul was going to be important, yet none of them paid off. And it's just these things that are just really big question marks. And whatever happened to Sally? I mean, the Sally radios inside Revelations, they just never got paid off. And they were the one thing I thought they were going to get paid off, because this was George Romero's assistant, and we thought, oh, we're going to Call of the Dead, so Sally's going to be paid off. Then she wasn't. And it's just like, why did you even introduce her in Revelations if you weren't going to do anything with her? It just makes no sense at all. Another thing is also in Revelations, the Frozen Forest Dr. Monty radios. He was talking about the Frozen Forest and how he was trapped there. That never turned into anything. The Frozen Forest never really turned into anything either. We don't even know anything about it, even though that's where our characters died. I mean, where is the Frozen Forest? What is the Frozen Forest? We still don't know. And don't even get me started in Alpha Omega's ending cutscene where Samantha says,
"We're going to fight the war, Eddie. The great war."
That never paid off either. There's so many things that didn't pay off. And I really hate to go this deep, but if I'm being honest, going into Black Ops 4, I was wanting 3 questions answered. It was going to be Mob of the Dead / Blood Files, Sally, and the giant radios. But guess what never got any payoff? The giant radios, because in the giant radios, we heard 3 things that just never had any payoff. The first thing is when Maxis is talking about how the bombs went off and they were nuclear bombs that went off and that he hopes to live to see the day if their plan actually worked. What happened with that? What happened to Nikolai killing multiple Richtofens? There was the one in the fire, the one with the boat hook. Wait, nobody told me. I don't even know why I have that radio memorized, but like whatever happened with that? And then there's a final radio that had some sort of thing that we thought was going to pay off, and this was Dempsey trying to get a fix on their location. I mean, I thought we were going to return to the giant and the end of the story to just kind of break the cycle that way, but none of these things paid off, and that's what's so frustrating. And I'm not going to bring up any more because I have a lot more of things that wouldn't pay off, and I just don't want to make this video too long and keep playing about these things. But honestly, there were so many things that it felt like they were building towards that just never happened, and I just don't even know what to say because there are just so many. And I get, with this storyline being as complicated and as crazy as it is, there was no way they're going to pay off absolutely everything. But there were things they were explicitly building towards the end that we know for a fact they were building towards the end. But you know what? They never got paid off. And that is so frustrating to happen with this story. But of course, I just have 2 last things to say about the end of this story and why it wasn't successful. And I saved these for last because these are what everybody says already, but I just have to bring them up because it is so annoying. But After going through all of Black Ops 3 and the first 6 zombies maps inside Black Ops 4, with the exceptions of the intros to The Rise and Drake and Classified, we had full CGIs, intros and outros for every map. But starting with Alpha Omega, we got slideshows for intros and outros. I mean, intros I would have lived with, but the outros too? Man, it's annoying. And what this actually means is that for the last 2 maps in the Aether storyline forever, we got slideshows for intros and outros. This is completely unacceptable. And don't even bring up the budget cuts to me, because I'm going to be making videos on that. But let me just say this. Our budgets weren't cut when we all paid $50 for that Black Ops pass. And if we gave them $50 in advance, they should have had the money to do it. But, of course, talk about that another day. And if you really want to rub some salt in the wound, you want to know what? For the exact same operation that Tag der Toten came out in, the multiplayer / blackout trailer was CGI. And we got slideshows and zombies. Why couldn't they use the budget to make the CGI trailers for blackout and multiplayer and just use that for the zombies outro? Unacceptable, completely unacceptable. Before I get too frustrated on this, I'm going to just move on to the next point because this part really does frustrate me when I see things like this. But now I'd hate to repeat myself because I've been saying this for so long, ever since like at launch actually, where the first rumor came out that DLC 3, or I guess the Return to Aether map, was going to be a Nuketown remake. I mean, I've literally been saying it since then. You guys can go back forever. I'll even link the video on the screen right now, but I hate to repeat myself so many times because I've been saying this for almost a year now. But really, the Aether story ended on 5 straight remakes? I mean, just wow. I mean, the last original Aether map, and I know everybody's saying this, but I said it before everyone else, I promise you, but the last original Aether map was Gorod Krovi that came out in 2016. We are at the end of 2019, sir. Just think about that for a second. For the end of this story that we're never going to see again. We're never going to see our characters again, and it ended on a bunch of remakes. I don't even know what to say. I honestly don't. And to say that the final map for the Aether storyline was Call of the Dead, for that to be the final map, I mean, what's the parody in that? Like, honestly, why are we going back there? Because that's where Richtofen originally experimented on the other 3 characters, and I guess that's where they binded their soul to the elemental shard, and maybe that's why the Aether even exists. Well, the thing is, that was all told to us in the final map. Guess what? That was not built up. Nothing else was built for that. That was all told to us through radios and wisps inside the final map. Unlike many other things that were being built up for years, literal years for the end, that never got paid off. But we got, oh, why Call of the Dead's important? Well, let me come up with some sort of excuse with the elemental shard binding their souls and all that stuff. Like, no, shut up, please spare me, sir. And I don't know, but that's really all I gotta say, except for one final thing. And this is actually the biggest problem out of all of these. Like, everything you've heard me say, yeah, they're huge problems and they shouldn't have happened, but the biggest mistake Treyarch has made out of all of these is ending the Aether storyline while it was in this trash can of a situation. They saw how bad the situation was, so why would you end the Aether storyline without giving it a proper send-off in a game that wasn't the worst possible thing of all time? Also, who is going to be willing to give zombies another chance after how we all see how Aether was treated? I mean, honestly, who among you is going to be hyped for the next zombies map, with even if it's Aether rebooted, or even if it's Chaos continued, or a new storyline altogether? Who is going to be trusting in Treyarch to do this? I mean, the only thing they had going for them was the Aether storyline, and they ended it. They not only screwed over the Aether storyline, they screwed over the zombies mode. Nobody cares about zombies anymore because of this. Nobody's going to be excited for the next game when it comes out. I mean, of course there'll be excitement because we were taking a year off zombies, but it's never going to be how it was again. Not even close. It's not even going to be Black Ops 4 levels. Of course, I'm not saying this because I know it, but honestly, like, you just see how excited people were for the Aether storyline. Like, think about this for a second. When Alpha Omega came out, Noah J456 was streaming to 100,000 people solely because that map was Aether. That is the only reason. There's no other reason he got 100,000 viewers if it was Chaos. There's no other reason that why he got 100,000 viewers on his live stream. just period point blank. That is exactly how it is. So I don't know, but that's really all I'm going to say. And I mean, I'll just leave you guys off with the final message here, that no zombie game before this has been perfect. By far, none of the other games have been perfect. Black Ops 2 was a garbage fest at first, and then, I mean, Black Ops 3 has microtransaction problems, even though Black Ops 4 has them worse, and, you know, all the other games have their problems, but you could have your flaws and imperfections in your game, and it could still be perfect to me and so many others, but honestly, there's a limit to how many mistakes you can make.